What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Saturday stream. I like to do these a little early, but had some kid and family stuff to do this morning. So we're doing a rookie mock draft, 12 team. Going a little deep on this one, though. Going to go 5 rounds on this thing. We kind of got the thing already started. I got some people from our Patreon and from Twitter out there, and we're going. So 12 team Superflex. Tight end premium is the values here. So if we're looking here in terms of just like the first round, those first 7 picks are pretty chalk. Now, how you want to split up those picks and who you like more in that area, it really just depends, right? So Marvin Harris Jr. and Caleb's been going there. Jaden's pretty consistently going in those top 3, top 4 marks there. And then the interesting thing is the fall of Drake May. So we have definitely seen Drake May move down kind of the list in terms of the value there. I got a pick here real quick. I'm pissed at Hey Dave, you took my guy, but I'll just take A.D. Mitchell. So when you're looking at just the value of Drake May's definitely dipped to the 106 margin. So I know I have some followers that play Devy. I know not a lot of people play that format anymore, but if you're sitting there with May, now is not the time to sell, right? When you're thinking of where May's at, he's still going to be a top 10 pick, but we have seen consistently Bowers jump him in tight end premium. We've seen Neighbors definitely jump him, and we've seen Jaden Daniels dump him. And the reason why is because of his rushing upside. So just a note, Drake May has definitely fallen down in terms of that value. Again, we're going live here, so if you want to leave some comments, you got some questions there. We are going to go over pick value in a little bit, kind of looking at the first 6 picks and what you can get for them. I'm going to pop some trades that you can do up on the screen and talk about at the end of this draft, so stick around for that. But any comments, anything at all? You want to drop some Jerry Judy knowledge in there? You want to go in there? I have some trade questions. I'm here to answer them for the next 30 minutes, kind of just give back to the community and the YouTube channel. So when we're looking at the first round, nothing really out of the ordinary with these first round picks. Franklin and Thomas, maybe Franklin a little early. But when you're really sitting there at that 109 mark, it's tough, depending on who falls there. I would say definitely when you're looking at tiers, 109 is your tier. I think my favorite probably pick is the 105 mark because you're essentially still getting one of the top 5 assets there. It's really just who's coming there with me, right? After that, I think there is definitely a tier break depending on what you think of Drake May. Now, some people love Drake May. I still think Drake May has the tools, right? So I think from a tools perspective, May is there, but landing spot's going to matter, all of that. So maybe you're sitting at 106, you don't like that spot. You're not a fan of that spot in terms of where you value. So maybe that's where you move back. I've done a lot of dynasty consultations. So one thing I do when I have the time, which is not all the time, but definitely when I have the time, is I do one-on-one consultations. We do 30 minutes. We talk about your draft, talk about your team. I kind of run your team in through some databases just to see where they're at. I get a ton of questions about guys having that 106 mark, right? So when you're looking at that 106, they say, hey, what should I do with this? I think it's a really big trade piece. I think if one of those quarterbacks falls at that spot, you have to really think it. Like if May is sitting there, you have 2 quarterbacks, you're excited about it, man, go grab them, right? Go move that pick. And we're going to show you some value, what you can get for the 106, but you might be able to move back a little bit. Maybe you like Xavier Worthy at the back end of the first, right? Plus an asset. So that 106 mark to me that's probably the last value pick that you have in that first round, depending on what you think of Rome Odunze, right? Like, I hope Rome Odunze's dad's not watching this stream right now. But if you like him, then maybe 107 is that mark. But that 106, 107 is definitely trade bait there. I do think you can pivot off of that. There's been a ton of chatter out there about moving the 107. If you can get like JSN and back forth, right? You re-roll that pick. Hey, I'd rather have Rome Odunze's upside or whatever. But I haven't seen those move. And that's the thing. The one thing about a lot of the value that I see out there, and I was having some fun with it today too. Whoever holds JSN in your league probably is a JSN believer, right? He's not moving off of him for selling cheap. And again, I don't know if 107 would move it. Maybe for some people out there would, but when you look at those picks, that's generally where you see. I think the biggest riser that you could see is McCarthy. So I do think JJ McCarthy, we could see him maybe get in that 107, 108 mark, and you'd be excited if you're in the back end. And that's going to push some value there. But if McCarthy finds himself, top 10 pick, like some people have said, then you're really looking at a guy that can move himself up, right? I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm definitely like not as high on McCarthy as I've seen QB1, QB2 marks. I think for me, he needs to go sit somewhere, learn a system. I think the Vikings would be great if Cousins was back somewhere where he's not going to get thrown in right away. Then I think he could elevate it, right? I get this. I got asked this in the Patreon chat, so I might as well just throw it out there to get canceled. They asked me what my ceiling is for McCarthy. I think a good Daniel Jones, right? A solid QB2, possible QB1 with that rushing upside is perfectly fine for him in terms of that value there. Now, as a floor, though, I think he could be Desmond Ridder. So, I think that there is very two extremes with JJ. I think he has to find himself in a perfect spot with a lot of these quarterbacks, right? So that's where I'm looking at it there. When you're looking at the second round, so we got Xavier Worthy, AD Mitchell kind of go in that range. Then the running backs go off the board, right? So this is your pick your favorite running back. What we're seeing right now is that second round. But I caution everybody, what you're going to start seeing, though, is a lot of these running backs will get pushed into the back end of the first. So if you're sitting there at the 201, 202, 203, you can get an Xavier Worthy if you believe in him, a Lad McConkey who's sitting there at 203. Or if you need that running back and you're like, hey, I want to go push up, then that's fine. That's okay in terms of where that value is at. So just know that as soon as the running back in the capital goes, these wide receivers you're seeing go in the back end of first, or possibly Franklin. If Franklin doesn't get the draft capital you see, you're still going to be able to probably get some pretty good wide receivers in the beginning of second, where those running backs get pushed up, right? Now, some other guys going, Keon Coleman is probably the one that's all across the board, 204, 208. He's kind of going all over the place in terms of value right now. If that's the case, I think that's one of those things where if I'm getting Keon at the 208 to 212 mark, I don't mind taking maybe the shot on him, right? I think it's a swing at the fences. You have some extra picks in there. I didn't like him when he was going to the first round pick, but now he's not, right? So I think that there is value there. Corum, he's all across the board. Running back 1 for some, running back 8 for others. Bo Nix sitting there. And again, Nix and Michael Penix Jr., those guys, in that second round, we've talked about it. Really what that is you're just like, hey, who's going to have that value and who's going to maybe get in the back end of the first. So right now, what's happening is you're just drafting guys thinking maybe back into the first is where they're going to go. But, if they don't get first round draft capital or don't find a good spot, like I think Michael Penix Jr. is interesting if he goes like the Seahawks in the second round or the Raiders, right? Like you can maybe see him go out there, but that's probably their value. If Nix goes in the first, you might be able to see him get first round capital because it's super flex. But I don't think that their value changes a ton from what you see on the screen there. Then tight end, Jatavian Sanders going tight end too. I don't want to waste a second round pick on Sanders when I can get Ben Sinnott in the fourth round, right? Or even Theo Johnson in the third. I think that there's more on the board there. I love Marshawn Lloyd going there at the 210. Probably my favorite value play there. Obviously, I love Jalen Wright, but I'm not going to sit here and say that like that's my favorite value play because that'd just be conceited, and I'm not an asshole. But Marshawn Lloyd, I think at 210, excellent pick there. I think at running back 4 is really good value in that range there. So that's the second round. I think the one thing to note, Ricky Pearsall sitting there in the second, we've started seeing his value rise a ton from his combine performance. So that's another guy to kind of know. Ricky, sitting there at 207. I like him at the second round as a great value. I think Zags had a great value draft there with the Dunze, Pearsall. We'll get into Shipley too. But really good value draft as well. So big takeaways from the second. Running back's going to go late first for sure. Very good value there. I really like the value in that range. And overall, some of these wide receivers though. Yeah, that's true, Adam. You're right. Maybe I am sometimes an asshole. Only to Jeff Bell, though. So if you know who Jeff Bell is, he's my co-host at Football Guys. Definitely just an asshole to him, but he deserves it, if we're being honest. Now, in the third round, when we're looking there, let me make my last pick, and I'll just kind of go over the board. We're getting a little deep here on this here. I'll take Ali. So when we're looking at terms of third round, we got Braylon Allen. I think, for me, it's weird because, we were at the Devy Royale. We talked about this all across the board. We were pretty low on Braylon Allen coming through the process in terms of just the draft, where he's been at in terms of some people's rankings. But then what funny thing that happened to me is I was doing the rookie guide and going through it. I kind of went into Braylon Allen profile that I wrote as this. Okay, I'm throwing away everything I saw in college. Let me break down this guy with a clear view, right? I don't like doing the Devy stuff where you see a guy, you've known a guy for a long time, and then you kind of, because the NFL role is going to be different. So for me, when I looked at Braylon, he came out a lot higher in my in my model than he would have had I been that Devy mindset, right? We always made the joke that he'd be a better edge. That was just one of those jokes that we always made. But in my reality, Braylon in the third is really good value. I think that's hell of a value, especially if he finds himself. If he can get, he didn't test though. So I know at the combine he didn't want to test. That's going to be a red flag. He's not going to test well. I don't think he's going to test well. I mean, at the pro day, you get that bump there. But to me, when you look at Braylon at 301, very good. If he gets that value spot, a lot of people have mocked him the Eagles, somewhere where he has that downhill rushing ability. I talked about his scheme fit and where he goes. He's a very north-south guy, but it wouldn't shock me to see Braylon just bouncing around, even in the league, and still being a relevant fantasy asset. In the third round, I don't think you can go wrong with that with some of these other guys. I think the two guys that I'm probably three guys that I'm interested in this area, Jalen McMillan and Polk, are guys that I like. I just drafted Polk in a startup in like the 18th, 19th round. I know I'm higher on Polk than some. Some will say it's Grubb system, Washington system, Michael Penix, but third round, I don't see the area there. But you have Bucky Irving, who had a terrible combine. Kind of like I saw, it was weird. Bucky Irving, to me, I was reading some risers and fallers and all of that. And it's so funny because some people were saying that Bucky Irving had a great combine. He rose his value. And then some saw the testing, the 40, all that, and said, we don't like his combine. I think with Bucky, he is probably one of the best pass catching backs of this class. I don't think that's something that shocks people. Really bad pass blocker, though. One of the worst in PFF's pass blocking grades. And Oregon fans always come after me on that. But when you're looking at a third round shot, I think, 2 years ago, a lot of people threw Kyren Williams away, right? Everybody said, after that testing, the combine. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kyren Williams is still running his 40. Everybody kind of threw him away. Then he went to the Rams, didn't do too much. And then last year, look at him now, like, top 5 guy. He was par healthy with CMC. So I don't think you can just throw Bucky Irving away. However, I do think that, his evaluation now where he's at in the third round is probably fair, right? And you're going to have to just see where that landing spot is. And if that's, and you still believe in Bucky, third round is fine. Shipley is another one. Shipley didn't, it wasn't great in terms of this last year, but very good pass catcher, rushing ability, like just a very solid back, right? He was at one point, Devy, running back 1 or 2. Now you're sitting here looking at him in that third round. So there's value here, right? I'm not big on Ray, but Estime sitting there, I know he didn't run a great 40, but one of those things that is interesting is when you watch the tape on Estime, what you saw on the tape wasn't necessarily what he tested as. So when you were looking at the tape and you're kind of going through is why is that? What was the discrepancy there? Was it because he played at Notre Dame, didn't play against the best competition? Or was it just a bad testing day for him? So, see what the pro day looks like for these guys. Those are other things to think. I think the best value is Roman Wilson in the third. Him running in the 4.3s, or I think it was 4.3, 4.39, I thought. Maybe early. Yeah, he was in that range. Massive for him. Didn't see that at Michigan. Now, here's the thing with Roman Wilson. It's kind of the opposite of JJ. JJ didn't get to throw the ball a ton, so now it's a knock. Roman Wilson didn't get that usage in the receiving game or the passing game because they didn't do that at Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. I know this. So if Roman maybe he has a chance to bump himself up, right? Roman in the third is hell of a value because I think that he could maybe have that role in an offense. He tested well. If he has that role in that area, very, very good value there. Theo Johnson, one of the best RAS scores that we saw, relative athletic scores there. Michael Pratt, I saw a comment in the chat, and I couldn't pull it up, but they said, I don't know who the hell Michael Pratt is. Michael Pratt is a guy that in Superflex, going in the late third, I think he could be a backup quarterback with the possibility of getting out there and actually performing, right? So for me, Michael Pratt isn't that. I do want to answer this question because I told you guys I'd answer questions as you guys pop them in there. What's Judy worth after the trade? So I swear to God, Adam, in all the leagues that I'm in, he went on the block in every single one of them. I have not seen him get moved once. And I made sure I put a poop emoji on every single one that offered him on the block. If I had Judy right now, I would be looking at any second, probably mid-second or early if I could, right? That's probably what he's worth. You're not getting any first there. As far as player value, you might be able to go after, if you need a running back, some guys that are going late for me that I really like. So I'm in with my guy, PJ from C2C, Dynasty PJ. We're in the co-owner league right now. And we're kind of looking at some of these veteran running backs going. So I'm pulling it up right now. So some guys that maybe you could swing, that are still on the board right now. We're in the 10th round. From a veteran running back standpoint, maybe for Judy, Aaron Jones, possibly, right? So maybe you kind of go there and you look at it like, hey, maybe I can pivot off of Judy for a veteran guy like Eckler. We don't know where Eckler's at, right? Maybe you're going there because straight up value for picks is hard because I would take an early second, but I don't know how many people would really offer that. So, if I can get anything early second, absolutely. If I can get maybe a veteran running back, right? That people hate veteran running backs at this point. So a guy like Pollard, possibly Eckler, someone if I need that, right? If you're a rebuilding team though, and you might be because you have Judy on it, any type of combination of picks would be great. You could always offer like a third and second next year or something, trying to get back that second at some point. If it's 2 years out, might be a little easier there. But that's probably what he's worth. I don't love him in that offense. The thing is, like, he went to an offense that, people are down on anyway with Watson and everybody there. So it's hard to really get excited about that based on a value bump on the market, right? But maybe going a different route, trying a veteran running back, those type of things. Pratt aspires to Minshew. Yeah, pretty much. That's what you'd hope for. I will say Michael Pratt throws the football better. And I think that had he had a better year this year, he'd be talked about a little bit more. But, third round, I don't mind that. I'm not taking Rattler or Milton. Pratt is basically their ass. I would take, the 4 big guys, and then I would take Pratt. That's I don't want Bo Nix at Price. I don't want Michael Penix Jr. at Price. I'd rather have Pratt at Price. Now, 4th round, as we're kind of working through here. And again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. You guys can throw some stuff in the chat. Any trade questions, picks, anything like that. Or any bullshit. You want to just throw some bullshit in there? You feel free. It's Saturday. We're just having fun here. You had the video the other day that had T-Law for the 101 plus. Do you think that? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that, I think it just depends on the market value of where everything is at right now. So when you're looking at that, like, Caleb's coming in at QB 9, 8. I think, Lawrence is around 10, 11. It depends on the dynasty rankings you're looking at. They're very close. So it kind of just depends on what some guy that believes in law. I don't know how big the plus would be. I do have some trades coming up. I'm going to throw some trades up here in a minute for you guys to look at once we get through there. But I think it's not unreasonable. I think that T-Law is actually a fun target right now. I think that he's a target that as a QB2, you have to like. I think that, he's fine to pair with guys. I paired him with Anthony Richardson in one of my startups this year. I think that's fair. But if he's your QB2, you're more excited, right? But I do think that if you can get 101 plus something, though, based on value where Caleb's at, yeah, I think it's a fair deal both sides. Now, when you sit in the 4th round, it gets gross, but I think Jacob Cowan's getting slept on. I mean, Jeff Bell has him as wide receiver 50, which is downright disrespectful. Like, I don't know what Jeff Bell is thinking there. But I think sitting at 4.8, I know he's not very big. But I do like where that value is at. Isaac Geronda is another one. I think I said his name wrong. I don't know. But Louisville running back, I wrote all about him. He was the one I missed on the most based on the combine. Man, I actually did not love his film. Sat behind. So Geronda sat behind Braylon Allen, Ches Belusi, these guys at Wisconsin, didn't get a ton of playing time. Transferred to Louisville, split time there as well. And that's, I think, the thing with him, and you're looking at just his value, he tested one of the best at the combine in terms of RAS score, 9.99, and, under 4.40. And then you have to love his size, 220. Like, if you get that type of value in the 4th round, I think you have to. Like, that would be a guy that I'm definitely targeting in the 4th rounds of drafts. Everybody's going to make the Isaiah Pacheco comp. No one runs like Isaiah Pacheco in terms of just like someone's going to beat him, right? Like, that's Isaiah Pacheco. But I do think that if you're finding a value, I think he did shoot up boards. I think that that's the fun thing about it. If he can slip in that 4th or 5th round, I think you're really excited about him. Now, will you be able to get him late in the 4th? Probably not. But, I mean, in that range, early 4th, 3rd, possibly. Jace McClellan, another one. I said at 412. I like Jace. I think he's just one of those guys that if you're sitting in the back end or like after the draft, adding guys for your taxi, Jace is a guy to grab there. Then Schrader, Barner, Washington, Malik, that's an interesting one for me going in the 5th round because he's usually going in the 4th based on ADP. Stover, Gore, McCaffrey's getting love out there. I don't know if it's the last name. We'll call it nepotism or not, but he's definitely getting some love out there. Vidal is there. Hunter, Bell, Davis, Williams, Ollie, I'll take him later. But overall, this is generally speaking where you're at. But the question is right now, again, when you're thinking of this stuff, I feel like getting hot takey. Mims is worth re-rolling now for a second, then reacquiring later if the Broncos struggle bust to a season actual QB. Yeah, I've never been it's weird. Marvin Mims has a weird profile. I watched him all throughout college, obviously, because I played Devy. I liked him his freshman year. I kind of pivoted away from him after that. If the Broncos don't get an upgraded quarterback, I don't think it matters, right? Like, I think that's the big the question. Like, if they're not getting an upgrade at the quarterback position and the offensive line position, and I have I don't know if it's a hot take or not. I'm going to throw a question up here. Um, I think Sean Payton's a terrible head coach. I think he got elevated by Drew Brees. I think that his scheme is kind of I think the game passed him by a little bit. And I think that I don't really want anything in the Broncos area, right? If I could re-roll, let's say you could re-roll and get Lad McConkey. Would you do that? I think I would. I don't even like Lad that much, but I think I'd re-roll for Lad McConkey. I don't think I'd re-roll for Keon Coleman, but I would re-roll for like Pearsall, those guys, right? So if you want to re-roll at the wide receiver position, but if you're looking at this draft board, anything from probably 207 up, I don't mind re-rolling Mims if I can get a second. So like that's the thing. Like if people really love Mims, I think that people really love Mims as a prospect coming out. And they're going to look at last year as an aberration because of like, oh, Russell Wilson, the offense, whatever, utilization. Now Judy's gone. And yeah, could he maybe have a better year this year? Yeah. But he also could be Elijah Moore. Like that could be his outcome, right? That could be his upside there. So if you can re-roll for a second, I don't mind that. I don't mind taking the re-roll there. You can acquire him later. Like, yeah, that's no problem at all. Like if you want to acquire him, you can. But I feel like Mims is like everybody's going to be on everybody's dynasty buy list forever, right? I mean, that was Paris Campbell for a long time. Who else? Who else is on everybody's dynasty? Jameson Williams. I swear to God, I've seen more Jameson Williams dynasty buy thumbnails than anybody out there. So for me, like when I'm looking at that, Mims is definitely worth re-rolling early second. Like I would totally understand that doing that. I ended up getting T-Law plus a 210 for 101, so I feel good about that. Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, when you look at the value, T-Law 210 for 101. So, Caleb and T-Law, pretty close value there and getting that 210. So if you're looking at this draft, you're looking at back end running back, Lloyd Wright would be fun. Maybe some of these wide receivers fall there. At least you got something plus in second. That's exactly kind of how I would look at that deal too. And be happy with it. Right. And here's the thing, like everybody expects, remember at this time last year, Bryce Young was going 101 in all these mocks. CJ Stroud was going where Drake May was going. That's perspective, right? Like, I think that, everybody loves Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams, but I think perspective is needed when it comes to rookie drafts. Like Bryce is going at 101. I love Bryce. I thought Bryce was a very solid prospect. I loved Anthony Richardson, those guys going in that range. But if you can pivot off and get Trevor Lawrence, who I think could have a bounce back year, I think they added that room. I think Calvin Ridley leaving is a positive thing for that offense. I think they're going to add weapons to that offense in this next year. I think they're going to better their offensive line. I think there's a lot of things that you should like about Trevor Lawrence there. So I don't mind that deal. I think some people will look at it as a loss, but I think, for a lot of reasons, like re-rolling the 101 or 106 for these quarterbacks, sure thing is better, right? Is Caleb Williams going to be CJ Stroud? Maybe. He possibly could, or he could be Bryce Young, or he could be like all those Trey Lance. He could be Justin Fields. He could be all those other quarterbacks too. So I do like that you got added draft capital back. Now, I did say I was going to throw up some trades for you guys. So I'm going to just put this on the screen. I'll be behind it. So here's some deals that are going around. I added some from my previous video for the 101. The other ones are going to be on the next one as we go through it. This one just happened. 101 and Nico Collins for Jahmyr Gibbs. If you need a quarterback and you're sitting there and you have Gibbs, I love Gibbs. Gibbs is my running back one. If you need a quarterback though, and you're going to add Nico Collins there, I don't mind that. I don't mind, moving Gibbs, super flex, rebuilding, right? Contending, I'd still rather have Gibbs. I'd figure out the quarterback market. And that's the other thing. Quarterback market, like if you're contending, look at what Baker was going for last year, second round pick. Minshew. I traded for Minshew mid-year because my Joe Burrow got hurt. I won the league with Minshew. And Dak Prescott is my quarterback. Now I had Dak, but Minshew was able to bridge me, right? So I don't think you absolutely need to move off all the time for quarterbacks if you're in that retooling contender mode. I think that's just a strategy you can use. 101 for Puka and the 105. I think we've talked about that. Justin Herbert is sitting there. I will say Herbert's value is across the board right now. Some people think that, that offense is going to kill him. Some people think that offense isn't going to kill them, right? So in terms of like value plays there, I think he's going to be more efficient. I think he's going to be more efficient. Also, I think they're going to add him into the kind of like a rushing attack. Not so much, Greg Roman Lamar, but I do think he's efficient enough to where he can, and he's athletic enough to kind of score touchdowns on the ground. So we might see an uptick in touchdowns there, a la like Josh Allen type. I know they want to protect him. But, if you could buy Herbert now, when they're going to add weapons in the offseason and especially in the draft, possibly a wide receiver at number 5. I think you do that. I think that, Herbert's a fun kind of ad piece there. We had this deal here, 101, 112 for Trevor Lawrence, right? So the flip end of that deal that we just kind of discussed in the chat. Derek Carr 101 for CJ Stroud. I think I could go get CJ Stroud. If you can go get CJ Stroud for 101 and Derek Carr, you better go do it. Ayuk is sitting there. I love Ayuk right now as a trade piece. For me, I'm an Ayuk guy. I was last year. I thought he was going to increase his value, which he has. But now he's on that precipice of like, he's sitting in that range of wide receivers, like 9 to 22, that don't matter for me. They all have the same value. So if I can add Ayuk to the 108 to get the 101, I think that's a hell of a play there. I think that's part of it. I have no idea with Herbert right now as a haver. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to see. It's going to be frustrating at first. I'm going to say as a Michigan fan, as a Harbaugh guy, it'll be frustrating at first, but I do think that what they're going to bring there is consistency on an offense that hasn't had it, and I think they have an identity, and whether that identity is just ground and pound, I still think there's going to be opportunities where they know Herbert is the guy, and that Harbaugh went to the Chargers because of Herbert. They're going to use him. That's the clear path to victory. Now, I think they're going to protect him in a way. I think they're going to utilize screens more, Roman, tight ends, those type of things, which is totally fine. And that's going to have the efficiency numbers up. So I'm not like going to pound the table for Justin Herbert. It's like, I know he's going to be great there with Harbaugh, but I'm less concerned than others. But I get the concern. I understand the concern because if you haven't watched a ton of Michigan, or if you see the talks about JJ McCarthy, you're definitely going to be there. But let's be clear. Justin Herbert is not JJ McCarthy. Okay. Now here's some other picks that are going around right now that I was kind of going through here. 102 for Sam Laporta in a tight end premium league. So that's a 1.75 tight end premium. So that's where Laporta is going. He's definitely getting valued as tight end 1, right? So in a tight end premium startup that we're doing right now, 201 is where he went. And that is essentially Marvin Harrison Jr. went 2 picks later. So that is basic value for the 102 right now. So around the 102, you're also looking at, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, Bijan sitting there in that range. Like if you kind of want to move off of like player picks, kind of where their value is at. I thought this was another interesting one, the 102, 109 for Stroud. So really you're looking at going after possibly a quarterback plus a wide receiver at 109, or flip it, right? You're going to go after a wide receiver at 102, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then 109 is McCarthy. But if I can get CJ Stroud for these prices that I've been seeing lately, man, this might be the time to capitalize on CJ Stroud. I mean, CJ, to me, should be the 103 in Superflex leagues. I don't think he's getting priced at that right now. That could be a market efficiency that we could take advantage of, in my opinion, just based on what we're seeing, kind of the value. 102 for Garrett Wilson. So, that's kind of where he's going based on his value. Straight up, I've seen Garrett Wilson for 104. I've actually probably seen Garrett Wilson moved for 102 through to 105. So he's crossed that board there. I'm expecting big things for Garrett, coming back off of this year with Aaron Rodgers back. But his value definitely has taken kind of a hit. We got him at the 303 in a startup with the rookies included, wide receiver 9. So that's kind of depending on where your value of your league is at. 103 for Anthony Richardson sitting there. I'm a big believer that Anthony Richardson can have a really big year this year. I like him as QB1. He's going around, when you're looking at kind of mock or some of the drafts I've been in, 7, 8-ish range, right? So that's probably a buy on Anthony Richardson, because I do think that when you're thinking of like Caleb Williams going where he's at, at the 101, the recent 103 in the startup that we are doing, he actually, where's Neighbors at 301. So again, value-wise, just based on that as part of it. Calvin Ridley 104 for Amon-Ra. I'm a bit, that's interesting. I love Amon-Ra there. Jalen Waddle 104. I think that's one of those things you're going to re-roll for Neighbors. If you can get Neighbors for Waddle, I definitely probably do that. And I'm a big Waddle guy, but if I can re-roll, get Neighbors, that's pretty good value there. 105 for Brock Purdy. That's the total Purdy believer. In a recent startup, he went 310. So you're definitely buying high on Brock Purdy with that one. So that's someone that believes in him. I had a question about Purdy, on Reddit. I think I was doing a Reddit AMA, and they were talking about him. How comfortable do you feel with him? To me, he's tied to Shanahan. I think he's going to be Shanahan's quarterback for as long as Shanahan's in San Francisco. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how long is Shanahan going to be in San Francisco? So if Shanahan's going to be in San Francisco for 2 to 3 years, I'm pretty comfortable with Brock Purdy being a QB2 on my team, because I think he does have QB1 upside from a fantasy perspective, right? And I was the biggest Brock Purdy hater ever, because I just hate his face. But I can't, when you're looking at what's on the field, you can't, deny what he's been able to do. 106 for Kenneth Walker and Khalil Shakir. That's pretty good value for the 106, giving up that running back there where that value's at. Khalil, I don't know. I'm not a huge Khalil guy. I like him. He's a nice kid. I think he's fun on the football field. But yeah, I could do without that. I'd take the 106 there. Yeah, I like the wide receivers for 104s if you need a QB. Yeah, exactly. Like if you need to move at 104, especially again, when you're looking at that tier. So that's the one thing that I do want to harp on. So when we're going through here, I want to make sure I put the board back up for you guys. So that's the rookie draft that we did. But when you're going through kind of like where the rankings are right now in that tier. So if I'm going to pull up Keep Trade Cut off the cuff a little bit. And again, I know that Keep Trade Cut's not perfect. I don't need those dynasty weirdos yelling at me about Keep Trade Cut. I always laugh about the guys that, talk crap about Keep Trade Cut, but then they use it for content. So I'm always wondering like which one is it? So when we're going into that, I'm gonna go in through. I'm gonna share the screen for Keep Trade Cut real quick. The wide receivers are an interesting area. So when I'm looking at the wide receivers in terms of that value, I think the interesting spot for me. So when we're going through here on some of these guys, when you're looking at wide receiver, I would probably say 8. So when you're looking at wide receiver 8, I'll make myself a little smaller. Actually, I'll go over here. When you're looking at wide receiver 8, all the way probably. So you're looking from AJ Brown. Now, I know you could buy AJ Brown. I know you guys, there's a lot of people that are big believers in AJ Brown. AJ Brown, all the way probably, man, you could probably go down to DK Metcalf, maybe T. Higgins. That's probably a good stopping point there. So, from wide receiver 8 to 25, a lot of variance in there. And I think that you could see some of these guys go off in those wide receiver 1 marks, right? So like, I think that's the interesting question for me is like how, when you're valuing those picks and valuing those players, where the tiers are in the dynasty wide receivers, I think there's a giant tier right now. I think that if you want to throw AJ Brown in the top tier, you can just stay here with Malik at wide receiver 9, DK all T. Higgins at wide receiver 25. Those guys, I think is one huge tier. And you see it here at the rankings. Look at tier 8, just on this, Tyreek Hill all the way down. And it keeps going almost all the way down to Jackson Smith and Jigba. So there's definitely that clear tier here. So if I can move around, one thing I got from, Dave Wright. Dave, I can't believe I just forgot his name. Dave Wright, he always talked about having your tiers in Dynasty. And if you could add something to that guy, right? So like, for example, if I have Tank Dell, but I can get Drake London plus, I do that, right? Or moving down a little bit. If I have Rashee Rice, but I can get DK Metcalf plus, right? Now, obviously age, you got to know about scheme, that all stuff comes in. Then you do that. If you can move around in tiers, in your own tiers, not Keep Trade Cut tiers, if you have your own tiers, and we have our tiers kind of in our rankings on the Patreon, if you can move around your tiers, but still add pieces and add value there, then it's okay to do that. And I think right now, this offseason is where you should really be doing that for the wide receiver, that wide receiver position, because I do think that you can move around in the tiers a lot and you can collect value, especially in that rookie draft, right? So when we were doing that rookie draft and doing the rookie pick, I think that's part of it there. Thanks, Jacob. I love you, buddy. All right. If I can move within a tier and get a plus, yeah. I mean, basically, if you can't now, you want to believe in the player. There's obviously difference. Like Tyreek Hill is 30, right? So obviously, how confident are you that you're going to move up, Drake London for Tyreek if you can? I would always look at it from a perspective of if they're similar profiles, similar age-ish, in that same tier. If I can get a plus something, I'll do that. It's almost like re-rolling, but not re-rolling draft picks. It's re-rolling the position within the tier. That's how I kind of would put it. Like, hey, I'm going to re-roll Jordan Addison. If I'll move off him for JSN plus something, right? And JSN is one of those guys that's getting talked about a lot right now out there. And I definitely did want to mention JSN real quick because I did talk about it. I think Ryan Grubb is a big part of the context that's needed for JSN with his 3 wide receiver sets, everything he was able to do at Washington. My biggest concern with JSN, and if you've seen him at wide receiver 26, I think that's pretty good value, right? Some people buy into Jaden Reed down here, but I think JSN is appropriately valued on this. And if I can get him a little, value wise, I would take JSN straight up for Jaden Reed. I would personally. Some people might not, but I think that I would in terms of where Ryan Grubb is, his 3 wide receiver set, all of that value. The question I have for JSN is his quarterback. It's Geno Smith. That I've been a Geno Smith hater forever. But that's really the biggest question mark I have for JSN. It's not talent based, any of that. I like that. I've seen a lot of moves like Mike Evans for JSN or Mike Evans Monty for JSN. Like if you can do that, when you look at Mike Evans, he's sitting in that kind of that tier range, right? Can I go get, JSN? Like if he's a little bit higher that day, what do I have to add to Mike Evans? right now to go get JSN, right? Other guys in that range, what do I have to add to Stephon Diggs to go get JSN? If it's doable, if it's another veteran running back or somebody that I think could lose value in the draft, I think I'm going to go do that every time. And that's just kind of how I look at those guys. Now I want to present I'm going to go over through the draft one last time. If you have any Dynasty questions, drop them in the chat. Appreciate you guys all watching in here. I know I got a bunch of people watching. So if you have Dynasty questions or just, general speaking, any questions you have in there, I'll drop them in there. We're just talking. I got about 10 minutes left before the wife kicks me out. So just the draft, as far as like my favorite, in terms of the value picks there, I think that I really like what Bo did. And shout out to Bo, fellow NorCal guy out here. Bowers, I think in tight end premium is a great pick. I think if you can get Bowers any from 105 to 108 in that range, you'd be really excited there. I like the Blake Corum pick. Polk, obviously. Rice is, throwing in the 4th round's fine. Frank Gore is interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Frank Gore in terms of value, in terms of if he gets drafted, what does that look like there? When you're looking at like the first, I don't mind Adams, and Adams is a guy that, I think Adams followed me probably since I had like one follower on Twitter, and he's really been helping me out. Caleb, Brooks, Allen, fun picks there, especially if you like Jonathan Brooks. I had a fun Jonathan Brooks comp in the Football Guys Rookie Guide that no one reads my shit or I have not got canceled yet, but I put Le'Veon Bell. To me, his running style, his ability to kind of manipulate angles, I think that his play style too, just reminds me of that in college, right? When I do player comps, it's style comps. It's not so much like outcomes. So I'm not an analytics guy, so don't yell at me there. But I do see that in his game a little bit. Had he not torn his ACL, I think he's pretty much clear-cut running back 1. So if you can get a guy like that in the 2nd round, I'm excited about that. Like we talked about with Braylon earlier, like that there. Javon Baker was another one of my guys in Devy that I really liked. And I think he could definitely have one of those kind of rises that we see there. So fun little mock here in terms of where value is at. For me, it's all about those value picks that I showed you guys. Where's the value at? Where are those picks going right now? How do you move around in your tiers is always one of those things that, I have to give a shout out to, like, and definitely with Dave. He taught me that a lot, especially at the wide receiver, even the running back position. Like, I think at the running back position right now, before all these veterans get drafted, or excuse me, not drafted, dumbass. Before all these veteran running backs get signed in free agency, and then all these running backs get drafted, I think that there's definitely tiers to move within. I think there's a giant tier right now with like Monty, Robinson, Stevens, Swift, Harris, Warren, all those guys. I think that there's a giant tier there. So if you can pivot off, get an asset plus something to kind of move around in those tiers, I think that's the way to also attack that running back position too. So if you have any other questions, drop them in the chat. I appreciate everybody tuning in here. I got over 400 live viewers here. So if you have any questions, pop them in there. So this is a lot of fun. We do these every Saturday. I try to hop on here when I can. And then I kind of help you out with the values and picks there. We got a question. Is there a cutoff point where you're kicking a first to 20? I love this question because, I think it's one of those things that we always talk about. When is that cutoff? 110, 111. Yeah, so let's talk about the 25 class. So, going through my tiers and, where they're at right now in my rankings, very solid wide receivers in the 25 class, right? So you're looking at Luther Burden. If you don't know who that is, he plays for Missouri. You're looking at Ted McMillan. He plays for Arizona. Absolute stud. My comp for Ted McMillan is Mike Evans. That's actually my comp for him. Then you're looking at, Evan Stewart. He just transferred to Oregon, so he's probably going to get a pretty good bump up there. Then there's a lot of question marks now in the 25 class. So when you're looking at just overall, I think the biggest thing is the quarterbacks. So we don't know who Devy quarterback 1 is 25 class, right? So when you're thinking of like who's probably ranked the highest, probably Drew Aller. Shedeur Sanders is definitely probably in there. Jackson Dart should be in there, but there's no clear-cut guy. So I do think that you have to know that going in when you're moving those picks, because I don't know necessarily how much value right away it's going to be, because you're going to start hearing narratives that the 25 class isn't great. So you can hold those picks in that range. Running backs, there's a ton of running backs. I don't know if they're any good, right? I love Travion Henderson. Quinshon Judkins is a stud. Now they play on the same team. Damn it, Ohio State, right? So that's part of it. So when you think of the running backs, that's where they're in that range. After that, Jaden Ott is a guy from Cal that a lot of people should know. Katron Allen at Penn State with Nicholas Singleton. He's another guy out there. I think that the running back value is pretty heavy there. As far as where I'd be comfortable moving off of it, yeah, wherever JJ McCarthy lands. So if JJ is sitting at the 109, I'm moving to 10, 11, 12 just based on value, because I do think having that quarterback value is important, because the 25 class, the quarterbacks, there are a lot of question marks in that range. So if I can still sit there at the quarterback spot and JJ is on the board, I'm moving that pick for something of value, not just the 25 first. But if it's 110, I'm sitting there with Xavier Worthy, 80, Troy Franklin, he slips in the draft. Maybe I don't like any of these running backs in that range. Absolutely. Ship that 25, that 110, 111, 112, who's on the board for a 25 first, and just extract the value, because you don't know. Maybe it turns into Luther Burden, who is an absolute stud, and those wide receivers. Like, there is very good value there when you're going in there. And so we have combined rankings on our Patreon. That's kind of a big thing that we do on top of the other stuff. But just, and when I'm looking at the 25 class, Luther Burden comes in for me at wide receiver 14 overall right now, based on value, right? So like Devy mine value in that range. So definitely some guys in that. Nicholas Singleton, Travion Henderson, and Judkins. From a running back standpoint, I actually have them all between 15 and 20. So definitely some value there. The question mark is the quarterback class, because my best ranked quarterback is 28, Drew Aller, and that's overall combined. And that's just the biggest question mark of the 25 class. But absolutely, that's a long-winded answer to say kind of that 110, 111, 112. But I would definitely look where JJ's at. And I definitely would just say, okay, if JJ's gone and he gets first-round capital, then I'm going to maybe possibly move this pick for a 25 first. And that's definitely perfectly okay there. All right, John, if you guys have some questions, you guys can drop them. If not, I get out of here. I appreciate you guys tuning in this weekend. But overall, again, value, where are the tiers at? Like I said earlier in the stream, if you weren't watching, 106, 107 to me is the value play where you can really move off of those picks. There's a lot of fun going on there. So I think that's really good to say. My favorite draft pick in the draft right now is 105, because you just get to let the value fall to you. If a quarterback falls, you don't need one. You're going to be able to really be active and pivot off of that and kind of go there. And I do want to shout out, especially I'm an educator. So my spring break is coming. I will be doing some Dynasty consultations where I sit down with you like this on Zoom, just you and me. We go over your team. If you ever want to do that, just DM me or email on Twitter at DuBois_22. I will throw you in there, and I usually send out a link saying, hey, here's the sign up. And I sit down with you and kind of dive into you there. Obviously, we have one-on-one sessions on our Patreon. You can find a description, but we do those Dynasty consultations. I usually do those. We just hop in 20, 30 minutes, and we just talk ball. That's what I'm here for, to help you guys. So appreciate you guys all tuning in. If you ever want to hop in one of these, get on our Patreon, or, just check me out on Twitter as I post them. Every Saturday we do these mocks. Appreciate you guys.